The surgeon stopped counting at 11. 11 rounds pulled out of my 17-year-old boy. They didn't just want him dead, they wanted to erase him. I stood in that sterile hallway, the smell of bleach burning my nose, while the detective told me it was a wrong place, wrong time situation. But I knew better. You don't empty a clip into a high school kid by accident. Someone wanted to send a message. What they didn't know was that the message had been received by the wrong father. Hit like, subscribe for more stories of justice, and comment justice if you believe the truth always comes out. The phone call didn't come in the middle of the night. It came at 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. I was down at the marina, sanding the deck of the charter boat I operated to pay the bills. It was a simple life. Quiet. Exactly what I needed after 20 years of noise, sand, and gunpowder. When I saw the number, I thought it was Mason asking for gas money or telling me he'd be late for our weekend dinner. Mason was a good kid. He was the only pure thing I had left in this world after the divorce. He had my eyes, but he had a gentleness I had lost a long time ago. Mr. Hunter? The voice on the other end was tight, professional, but I could hear the strain. This is Nurse Eliza from Mercy General. You need to come down here. It's your son. The sandpaper dropped from my hand. Is he sick? He's been shot, sir. He's in surgery now. The world didn't spin. It didn't go blurry. For me, everything sharpened. The sunlight reflecting off the water became blindingly bright. The sound of the seagulls became deafening. My heart rate slowed down. It's a reaction drilled into me from years of training. When the chaos hits, you go cold. You lock it down. I'm 5 minutes away, I said. My voice sounded like gravel. I didn't speed. I drove with terrifying precision. I parked the truck, walked through the sliding glass doors, and navigated the maze of the hospital until I found the ICU waiting room. And there she was. Morgan. My ex-wife was pacing the floor, her heels clicking rhythmically against the linoleum. She was wearing a white designer pantsuit that probably cost more than my boat. Her hair was perfect. Her makeup was flawless, except for the slight smudge of mascara under her right eye. When she saw me, she didn't run to me for comfort. She stiffened. She crossed her arms over her chest like a shield. You're late, she snapped. I just got the call, Morgan, I said, my eyes scanning the room for a doctor. How is he? It's bad, Hunter. It's really bad. Her voice cracked, the first sign of real emotion I'd seen from her in 3 years. They said he lost a lot of blood. What happened? She looked away, biting her lip. The police said he was walking near the warehouse district. A car pulled up. 2 men got out. She swallowed hard. They didn't take his wallet. They just started shooting. Why was he in the warehouse district? I asked. He has school until 3. I don't know, she shouted, causing a passing nurse to flinch. I don't know everything he does, Hunter. Maybe if you were around more, you'd know. I looked at her. Really looked at her. We had been divorced for 3 years. She had left me because the military life was too hard, too lonely. But the truth was, she had found someone else. Someone with money. Someone who didn't wake up screaming from nightmares about Kandahar. Don't do that, I said quietly. Don't make this about us. This is about Mason. Before she could answer, the double doors swung open. A surgeon walked out, looking exhausted. His surgical greens were stained with dark, wet patches. My stomach tightened, but I kept my face stone. Family of Mason? I'm his mother, Morgan said, stepping forward. I'm his father, I added, standing right beside her. The doctor pulled down his mask. He looked young, too young to have seen what he just saw. He made it through the surgery. But it's critical. We had to remove his spleen, part of his liver, and repair damage to his right lung. His legs took the brunt of it. How many? I asked. The doctor looked at me, confused. Excuse me. How many times was he hit? 11, the doctor said softly. He was hit 11 times. Morgan let out a sob and covered her mouth. I felt a cold rage spreading through my chest, turning my blood to ice. 11 times. You don't shoot a kid 11 times to rob him. You shoot him 11 times to send a message. You shoot him 11 times to make sure the casket is closed. Can I see him? I asked. Briefly. He's sedated. We walked into the recovery room. The machines were beeping in a rhythmic, haunting tempo. Mason looked small in the bed. He was covered in tubes and wires. His face was pale, almost translucent. I walked to the side of the bed and took his hand. It was cold. His knuckles were bruised, like he had tried to fight back. I leaned down, whispering so only he could hear. I'm here, buddy. Dad's here. Morgan stood at the foot of the bed, weeping. But even in her grief, something felt off. She wasn't looking at Mason's face. She was looking at the door, like she was expecting someone. Or afraid of someone. Who did this? I asked, not turning around. I told you, the police said it was random, Morgan said quickly. Too quickly. 11 shots isn't random, Morgan. I turned to face her. Who have you been hanging around? Her eyes went wide. How dare you? My son is lying there dying, and you're blaming me. I'm asking a question. It has nothing to do with me, she hissed. Or Dominic. I hadn't mentioned Dominic. That was the name of her new boyfriend. The real estate developer. The guy who bought her the shiny car and the big house on the hill. I didn't say his name, I said calmly. Morgan froze. She realized her mistake. I know you hate him. I know you blame him for everything. I don't care about him, I said. I care about who put holes in my son. I let go of Mason's hand and walked out of the room. I needed air. I needed to think. In the hallway, 2 police officers were standing by the nurse's station, drinking coffee and laughing about a sports game. I walked up to them. They were uniformed patrolmen. Young. Sloppy. Are you the officers assigned to Mason's case? One of them, a guy with a buzz cut and a name tag that read Officer Kyle, looked me up and down. He saw a guy in worn-out jeans and a flannel shirt. He didn't see the threat. Detectives are handling it, buddy. We're just here to take a statement when the kid wakes up. Who are the detectives? Detective Blake, Kyle said. But don't hold your breath. That neighborhood? Gang territory. Shootings happen every day. Kids get mixed up in the wrong crowds. My son isn't mixed up in anything, I said. The officer shrugged. That's what all the parents say. Look, just go back inside and wait. If we find anything, we'll let you know. He turned back to his partner, dismissing me. I stood there for a moment, watching them. They weren't going to solve this. They didn't care. To them, Mason was just another statistic. Another file on a stack of unsolved cases. I walked out of the hospital and into the cool evening air. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a pack of gum. I had quit smoking years ago, but the urge was strong tonight. I leaned against my truck and closed my eyes. I replayed the doctor's words. 11 times. I opened my eyes. The grief was there, heavy and suffocating, but I pushed it down into a little box in my mind. I locked the box. I couldn't be a grieving father right now. Mason didn't need a father who cried. He needed a father who acted. I looked at the hospital entrance. A black luxury sedan pulled up to the curb. A man got out. Tall, slicked back hair, wearing a suit that cost more than my truck. Dominic. He walked toward the entrance, checking his watch. He looked annoyed, not worried. I watched him walk through the doors. I knew then that the war hadn't stayed overseas. It had followed me home. And if the police weren't going to fight it, I would. They thought I was just a fisherman. They thought I was just a washed-up ex-husband. They were about to learn that retired didn't mean expired. The air in the ICU was thick, suffocating. It smelled of antiseptic and unspoken lies. I stood in the doorway, watching them. Morgan was seated in the chair next to Mason's bed, clutching a tissue that was shredded to pieces. Dominic stood behind her, a hand on her shoulder. It looked comforting to anyone else, but I saw the pressure in his grip. He wasn't comforting her. He was controlling her. Hunter, Dominic said when he noticed me. His voice was smooth, practiced. Tragic. Just tragic. I told Morgan I'd cover all the medical bills. Top specialists. Whatever the boy needs. He doesn't need your money, Dominic, I said, walking further into the room. He needs to wake up. Dominic offered a tight, pitying smile. Of course. We're all praying for that. A man in a rumpled brown suit stepped out from the corner of the room. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. He held a notepad but wasn't writing anything. Mr. Hunter? I'm Detective Blake. He extended a hand. I didn't take it. He dropped it awkwardly to his side. I was just explaining to your wife, ex-wife, I corrected, to Ms. Morgan, that these cases are difficult. The area where Mason was found, it's controlled by the Vipers. They're a local syndicate. Nasty crew. Witnesses don't talk. Cameras mysteriously malfunction. It's a wall of silence. So that's it. I asked, keeping my voice low. You're giving up before the ink on the report is dry? Blake sighed, rubbing his temples. We aren't giving up. But you need to be realistic. If this was a gang initiation or a robbery gone wrong, the chances of finding the shooter are slim. We have to consider that maybe Mason was involved in something. Drugs? Debts? My son is an honor student, I said, stepping closer to Blake. I towered over him. He volunteers at the animal shelter on weekends. He doesn't run with gangs. Kids have secrets, Mr. Hunter, Blake said, taking a half step back. We found his backpack at the scene. Empty. No phone. No wallet. Just school books. It looks like a robbery. A robbery where they shoot the victim 11 times. I asked. That's an execution, detective. You know it. I know it. Blake's eyes darted to Dominic for a split second. It was fast, almost imperceptible, but I saw it. A look of recognition, fear, collusion. I couldn't tell yet, but my gut twisted. We're doing everything we can, Blake said, closing his notebook. But for now, focus on your son. Leave the police work to the police. He walked out without looking back. He's right, Hunter, Morgan said, her voice trembling. Just let them do their job. You always have to be the hero. Just stop. You're going to make it worse. Make it worse. I laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. Morgan, our son has 11 holes in him. How does it get worse than this? Please, she whispered. She looked terrified. Not sad. Terrified. Come on, Morgan, Dominic said, guiding her up from the chair. Let's go get some coffee. You look pale. Hunter can sit with the boy for a while. Dominic led her out. As he passed me, he paused. Don't do anything stupid, Hunter. You're a boat captain now. Stay in your lane. I watched them leave. The moment the door clicked shut, the room fell silent, save for the beeping monitor. I looked down at Mason. His face was swollen. A tube ran down his throat. I brushed a strand of hair off his forehead. I promise you, I whispered. I'm going to burn it all down until I find them. I waited 10 minutes to make sure they were gone. Then I left the room. I didn't go for coffee. I went to the parking lot, got in my truck, and drove to the warehouse district. It was dusk by the time I arrived. The area was a graveyard of industry, rusted corrugated metal, broken windows, and shadows that stretched too long. Police tape fluttered in the wind around a section of sidewalk near an old textile factory. I ducked under the tape. Most people look at a crime scene and see the blood. I saw the geometry. I saw the angles. There were chalk circles marking where the casings had fallen. I counted them. 9, 10, 11. They were clustered close together. Whoever shot him hadn't been spraying and praying. They had stood over him. They had walked him down. I crouched near the dark stain on the concrete that was my son's blood. I touched the ground. It was cold. I looked up. There was a street lamp directly above. It had been shot out. Broken glass littered the pavement. I scanned the buildings. To my left, a 3-story brick structure. To my right, an empty lot. If I were an ambush predator, where would I wait? I walked to the alleyway between the brick buildings. It was dark, filled with trash bags and the smell of rot. I moved slowly, my boots silent on the pavement. I found it behind a dumpster. A cigarette butt. Fresh. The brand was Red Eagles, cheap, nasty smokes. And next to it, scuffed into the dirt, a footprint. It was a sneaker, but not a normal one. The tread pattern was distinctive, a heavy, zigzag design with a logo on the heel that looked like a lightning bolt. High-end streetwear. Expensive. Not a random robbery, I muttered to myself. Robbers don't wait in alleys smoking cigarettes. They strike and run. This was a hit. They waited for him. They knew he was coming. Why was Mason here? I walked back to the bloodstain. I looked around again. My eyes caught a glint of metal in a storm drain about 5 feet away. The police had missed it. I knelt down and pulled a pin from my pocket, using it to fish the object out through the grate. It was a key. A simple, silver house key. But it had a keychain attached to it. A small, plastic blue dolphin. I froze. I recognized that keychain. I had won it for Mason at a carnival when he was 6 years old. He kept it on his house key ever since. But this wasn't his house key. This key looked new. Sharp. Why did he have this? And why had he dropped it, or thrown it, into the drain before he was shot? I pocketed the key using a tissue so I wouldn't smudge any prints. I heard a car engine rumble behind me. I didn't turn immediately. I listened. The engine was heavy, a V8. It idled low. "Yo, old man," a voice shouted. "You lost." I stood up slowly and turned around. A black SUV was parked at the edge of the police tape. 2 men were leaning out the windows. They looked young, maybe early 20s, wearing heavy gold chains and hoodies. "Vipers." "Just looking," I said, keeping my hands visible but loose. "Looking's dangerous around here," the driver said. He had a tattoo of a snake curling up his neck. "This is Viper territory. Cops left hours ago. You should too." "Did you see what happened here?" I asked, ignoring his threat. The passenger laughed. "We see everything. We see nothing. Depends on who's asking." "I'm asking." The driver opened his door and stepped out. He was big, but soft. He held a baseball bat in his hand, tapping it against his leg. "You deaf, Pops?" I said, "Get lost." I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I just looked at him. I looked at the way he held the bat, too tight, knuckles white. He was posturing. "My son bled out on this sidewalk today," I said. My voice was so calm it scared them more than shouting would have. "I'm not leaving until I understand why." The driver hesitated. He looked at his friend in the car. The confidence wavered. They expected fear. They expected me to run. "You crazy or something?" the driver muttered. "You have no idea," I said. The driver spat on the ground. "Whatever. Stay here, and you'll end up like the kid." He got back in the SUV and peeled out, tires screeching. I watched them go. They were scared. Not of me. Not yet. They were scared because the heat was on. They were patrolling the scene to make sure no one was snooping, which meant there was still something here to find. I looked at the key in my hand again. Mason wasn't just walking here. He was meeting someone. Or he was hiding something. I got back in my truck. I needed answers. And I knew exactly who to call. I hadn't spoken to Victor in 5 years. He was ex-intelligence, a man who lived in the shadows of the city's data networks. If a fly sneezed in this city, Victor knew which nostril it came from. I dialed the number from memory. "Hunter," a robotic voice answered after one ring. "This line is dead. Mason was shot, Victor. 11 times. Silence. Then, a heavy sigh. "Meet me at the diner on 4th. The back booth. 20 minutes. I hung up. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. The eyes staring back weren't the eyes of a boat captain. They were the eyes of a team leader. The predator was waking up. I started the engine. Morgan was lying. Dominic was hiding something. The police were compromised. And my son had a secret key. The puzzle pieces were jagged and covered in blood, but I was going to put them together, even if I had to break every finger in this city to do it. The diner on 4th Avenue was a relic of a different era, grease-stained windows, flickering neon signs, and coffee that tasted like battery acid. It was the kind of place people went to be forgotten. That's why Victor liked it. I parked the truck around the back, checking my mirrors 3 times before killing the engine. Old habits don't die. They just wait for you to need them again. I pulled my cap low and walked in. Victor was in the back booth, his back to the wall, facing the entrance. He didn't wave. He just tapped the empty seat across from him. Victor was former naval intelligence, a man who spent 20 years sifting through the digital garbage of the world to find the gold. He had been discharged for insubordination, which in our line of work usually meant he was right when the brass was wrong. "You look terrible, Hunter," Victor said, his voice a low rumble. He pushed a manila folder across the table. "My son is in a coma, Victor. Skip the pleasantries. Fair enough. He took a sip of his coffee, his eyes scanning the room over the rim of the mug. I dug into the shooting. The police report, the one that hasn't been filed yet, flags it as a random gang initiation. But the chatter on the low frequencies tells a different story. I leaned in. What story? It wasn't an initiation. It was a collection. My blood ran cold. Mason doesn't owe anyone money. He's 17. He saves his allowance to buy vintage records. Not Mason, Victor corrected. He opened the folder. Inside was a surveillance photo taken from a traffic camera 2 weeks ago. It showed a warehouse loading dock. In the frame, 2 men were arguing. One was a man I didn't recognize, a heavy-set guy in a flashy suit. The other man was Dominic. That guy in the suit is Felix Rossi, Victor explained. Lieutenant for the Vipers. They run the drugs, the gambling, and the protection rackets in the district where Mason was shot. I stared at the photo. Dominic looked terrified in the picture. His hands were up, placating. Why is my ex-wife's boyfriend arguing with a mob lieutenant? I asked, the pieces starting to click together in a sickening way. Because Dominic isn't just a real estate developer, Hunter. He's a laundromat. Victor tapped the photo. He washes money. He takes the Viper's dirty cash, runs it through his construction projects, and hands it back clean. But word on the street is, the Vipers are missing a shipment. A big one. And they think Mason took it? No, Victor shook his head. They think Dominic took it. But Dominic is slippery. He's been telling them for weeks that he's having overhead issues. When the pressure got too high, the Vipers decided to send a message. They didn't go for Dominic. They went for the thing Dominic is supposed to care about. I slammed my fist on the table, rattling the silverware. They shot my son to motivate Dominic to pay up? It's a classic squeeze play, Victor said, his face grim. They think Dominic is Mason's stepfather. They think hurting the kid hurts Dominic. I felt a nausea rising in my throat that had nothing to do with the smell of grease. They don't know Dominic, I whispered. That man doesn't care about Mason. He barely tolerates him. That's the tragedy, Victor said softly. Your boy took 11 bullets for a debt that wasn't his, to pressure a man who probably sees him as collateral damage. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the key I had found in the storm drain. I slid it across the table. What about this? I found it at the scene. Mason dropped it before they hit him. Victor picked up the key, squinting at the jagged teeth. He pulled out a small jeweler's loop from his jacket pocket and inspected the serial number stamped on the neck. This isn't a house key, Victor muttered. It's a high-security key for a private storage facility. Ironclad storage downtown. Expensive. Discreet. Mason doesn't have a storage unit. No, Victor looked up, his eyes sharp. But Dominic might. If Mason had this key, it means he found something. Maybe he took it from Dominic. Maybe he was trying to use it as leverage. He was trying to fix it. I realized, the thought hitting me like a punch. Mason isn't stupid. He probably overheard Dominic. He probably stole the key to find out what Dominic was hiding, thinking he could go to the police. He was trying to be a hero. And he got caught, Victor finished. I stood up. The rage was different now. Before, it was hot and chaotic. Now it was cold. Focused. Tactical. Can you find out which unit this opens? I asked. Give me 10 minutes on the laptop, Victor said. But Hunter, if you go after the Vipers, you're starting a war you can't win alone. You're one man. I looked at the door, my hand on the handle. I'm not one man, Victor. I'm a team leader. And I'm not starting a war. I'm finishing one. I walked out into the cool night air. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Morgan. Where are you? The doctors are saying his vitals are dropping. You need to be here. I gripped the phone until my knuckles turned white. She was at the hospital with him. With Dominic. The man who had painted a target on my son's back was sitting by his bedside, holding his mother's hand, playing the grieving saint. I got into my truck. I wasn't going to the storage unit yet. I needed to look Dominic in the eye. I needed to see the fear. I peeled out of the parking lot, the tires screeching against the asphalt. The Vipers had made a mistake. They thought they were dealing with a suburban family. They thought they were squeezing a soft target. They didn't know that by shooting Mason, they hadn't just hurt a boy. They had woken up a monster that had been sleeping for a decade. And now, the monster was hungry. The hospital parking lot was a blur as I sped out, my truck eating up the asphalt. My destination had changed. It wasn't the storage unit, not yet. It was the hospital. I needed to see the look on Dominic's face. I needed to see the lie in his eyes up close. When I strode back into the ICU waiting area, the scene was exactly as I'd pictured. Morgan was hunched over in a chair, twisting a damp tissue in her hands. Dominic stood beside her, a hand resting on her back, whispering what I was sure were empty comforts. He looked like a magazine ad for a luxury watch, all polish and confidence. But I saw the slight tremor in his hand. I saw the way his eyes kept flicking toward the elevators. He was a cornered animal trying to look like a king. I didn't say a word. I just walked over and stood in front of them. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. Morgan looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. "Hunter, you're back. Any news?" she asked, her voice weak. "Yeah," I said, my gaze locked on Dominic. "I've got news." Dominic stiffened. He forced a polite smile. "Anything from the police?" "The police are useless," I said flatly. "They think it was a robbery. But it wasn't. It was about a debt. $250,000, to be exact." Morgan gasped. "What? Mason doesn't have that kind of money. He doesn't have any money." "I know," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "The debt wasn't his." I took a step closer, my shadow falling over them. "Dominic, I need to speak with Morgan. Alone." Dominic's smile faltered. He tried to reassert his control. "Hunter, now is not the time. She's been through enough. Now is exactly the time," I interrupted. "Go get her a coffee. Or a water. Or whatever you do when you need to pretend you care. But you're going to leave this room for 5 minutes." My tone left no room for argument. It wasn't a request. Dominic looked from me to Morgan, his jaw tight with fury. He wanted to refuse, to stand his ground, but he saw something in my eyes that made him reconsider. He gave Morgan's shoulder a final squeeze. "I'll be right back." As he walked away, his posture was rigid. He was defeated, and he knew it. I turned back to Morgan. I knelt down in front of her chair, so we were eye level. "Listen to me, Morgan. This is hard, but you need to hear it. The men who shot Mason are called the Vipers. They're a mob crew." She shook her head frantically. No, that's not possible. Mason wouldn't be involved with people like that. He wasn't. He was a pawn," I said, trying to keep my voice gentle. "He was caught in the middle of something. The debt they were collecting on, it belongs to Dominic." Her face contorted in disbelief, then anger. "Stop it. Just stop. You've hated him from the moment I met him. You're just jealous because he can give me the life you never could." The word stung, but I didn't let it show. This was the wall I knew I would hit. Her denial was a fortress built on designer clothes and expensive dinners. "This isn't about me, Morgan. This is about our son lying in that bed," I said, my voice firm. "Dominic is laundering money for the Vipers. He uses his real estate business to clean their cash. They think he stole from them. So they sent a message. They shot Mason to scare Dominic into paying them back." "You're lying," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You're making this up to hurt me, to ruin this for me." "Am I?" I asked softly. "Think about it. Why was Mason in the warehouse district? Why was Dominic so quick to show up at the hospital, acting the part? Why are the police so quiet about a shooting that involved 11 bullets? They're all scared of the Vipers. And Dominic put us right in the middle of it." I could see the gears turning in her head. A flicker of doubt crossed her face, a tiny crack in the fortress. But then Dominic returned, holding 2 cups of water. He saw her face and immediately went on the defensive. "What did you say to her?" he demanded, placing the cups on the table. I stood up, towering over him again. "Just catching her up on the family business." He put his arm around Morgan, pulling her close. "Leave her alone, Hunter. You've done enough damage." I looked at Morgan, her face buried in Dominic's expensive suit. She was choosing comfort over truth. She was choosing the lie because the lie was beautiful and the truth was ugly. I felt a profound sense of loneliness. I had hoped, somewhere deep down, that the mother in her would see through the facade. I was wrong. You're right, I said, my voice hollow. I looked at Morgan one last time. I've done enough. I turned and walked away without another word. I didn't look back. I knew what I had to do now. Victor was right. I couldn't rely on anyone. If I wanted justice for Mason, I would have to get it myself. The storage unit was the next step. It held Dominic's secrets, and whatever was inside was the proof I needed, the proof Morgan couldn't deny. The Vipers were watching Dominic. They were getting impatient. I had to get to that unit before they decided to clean up all their loose ends. I was on my own, and the hunt was officially on. The storage facility on Industrial Way was a fortress of corrugated metal and floodlights. Ironclad storage promised security, but at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, it looked more like a prison block. The place was silent except for the distant hum of the highway. I parked the truck 2 blocks away, in the shadows of an abandoned lumber yard. If the Vipers were watching Dominic, they might be watching this place too. I approached on foot, sticking to the shadows. Victor's intel was solid. Unit 4B was in the second row, near the back. I slipped through a gap in the chain-link fence, a weakness I'd spotted from 50 yards out. Security cameras swept the main lanes, but the shadows between the units were blind spots. I reached Unit 4B. The lock was heavy, gleaming silver under the harsh security light. I pulled out the key Mason had found. It fit perfectly. The mechanism turned with a satisfying clunk, and I rolled the door up just enough to slip inside. The air inside was stale and dry. I flicked on my tactical flashlight. The beam cut through the dust motes and landed on a stack of boxes. Cardboard file boxes. Dozens of them. I opened the nearest one. It wasn't filled with old clothes or holiday decorations. It was filled with financial records, ledgers, bank statements. But underneath the papers, I found something else. Hard drives. I picked one up. It was labeled simply, V, 2023. V for Vipers? Vance. I was about to pocket it when I heard it. Tires crunching on gravel outside. The sound was slow, deliberate. A car prowling. I killed the light. Through the crack under the door, I saw headlights sweep across the row of units. They stopped right in front of 4B. I didn't panic. I moved. I climbed onto the stack of boxes, positioning myself above the door. If they came in, they would look forward, not up. The door rattled. Someone was trying to open it. It's unlocked, a voice grunted outside. Idiot left it open. The door rolled up all the way. 2 silhouettes stepped into the unit. I recognized them instantly. It was the 2 low-level thugs from the crime scene earlier. The driver with the snake tattoo and his friend with the bat. They walked in, their flashlights sweeping the floor. Boss said clear it out, the driver said. Burn everything. Can't let the cops trace the money back to the construction site. They were here to destroy the evidence. Dominic must have tipped them off, or they were just cleaning house. They moved deeper into the unit, backs to me. I dropped. I landed silently behind the guy with the bat. Before he could react, I had him in a chokehold. He thrashed for a second, trying to swing the bat, but I tightened my grip on his carotid artery. 5 seconds later, he went limp. I lowered him quietly to the floor. The driver spun around at the sound of the bat clattering to the ground. He shone his flashlight in my face. What the? He reached for his waistband. I saw the glint of a pistol. I didn't hesitate. I stepped inside his reach, deflecting his arm upward. The gun discharged into the ceiling, bang. The sound was deafening in the small metal box. I drove my knee into his stomach, doubling him over. He gasped for air. I grabbed his wrist, twisting it until I heard the snap of bone. He dropped the gun. I swept his legs, sending him crashing onto the concrete. I put my boot on his chest, pinning him down. I picked up his gun, a cheap 9mm, and ejected the magazine, tossing it into the corner. You? He wheezed, staring up at me with wide, terrified eyes. You're the old man from the alley. I'm the father, I corrected, leaning down. Where is Felix? Go to hell, he spat. I applied pressure to his chest. He groaned. I'm not a cop, son. I don't have to read you your rights. I don't have to follow procedure. I just want an answer. His bravado cracked. He was a street thug used to intimidating shopkeepers and high school kids. He wasn't ready for this. The club, he gasped. The Neon Lounge. He runs everything from the back office. And the order? I pressed. Who ordered the hit on my son? Felix. It was Felix. He said the accountant was skimming. He said we needed to squeeze the family to make him pay up. The accountant is Dominic, I said. He nodded frantically. Yeah, Vance. Vance was short on the last 3 drops. Felix said shoot the kid. Make Vance watch. The rage flared again, hot and white, but I pushed it down. I had what I needed. A confirmation. Get up, I said, stepping back. He scrambled to his feet, clutching his broken wrist. He looked at his unconscious partner, then back at me. Take your friend. Tell Felix I'm coming. Tell him he missed. The thug didn't need to be told twice. He dragged his friend out of the unit, stumbling into the night. I heard their car peel away seconds later. I turned back to the boxes. I grabbed the hard drive marked V 2023 and a handful of the ledgers. This was the leverage. This was the bomb that would blow Dominic's life apart. But I wasn't done. I had sent a message to Felix, but messages needed to be delivered in person to be truly understood. I walked out of the storage unit, locking it behind me. The night air felt colder now. I got back in my truck and looked at the address on my phone for the Neon Lounge. It was a high-end club downtown, the kind of place where politicians and gangsters rubbed shoulders. I checked my watch. 11:45 p.m. The club would be packed. I wasn't going in there to arrest anyone. I wasn't going in there to start a shootout. I was going in there to look Felix Rossi in the eye and let him know that the accountant's family wasn't just a soft target. It was a kill team of one. I pulled out of the shadows and merged onto the highway. The city lights blurred past me. Dominic was a coward. Morgan was blind. The police were frozen. It didn't matter anymore. I was awake. And for the first time in years, I felt completely, terrifyingly calm. The Neon Lounge was tucked between glass towers and old brick warehouses, a glittering oasis for the corrupt and the connected. The neon sign bathed the sidewalk in electric blue light. Luxury cars lined the curb, Maseratis, Porsches, Range Rovers. The bouncer out front looked like he wrestled bears for breakfast. He was the kind of muscle who made a living looking intimidating. I parked the truck in a loading zone across the street. I didn't care if it got towed. I wasn't planning on being here long. I crossed the street and walked straight toward the entrance. The bouncer stepped forward, one massive hand raised. Private party tonight, he said, his voice a low rumble. Members only. I looked up at him. He had 60 pounds on me, easy. His neck was thicker than my thigh. But size doesn't mean skill. Size just means you're a bigger target. I'm here to see Felix, I said calmly. The bouncer smirked. Felix don't take walk-ins. Tell him Hunter is here. Tell him we need to talk about Mason. The bouncer's smirk faltered. The name meant something. He reached for the radio clipped to his belt, muttering something I couldn't hear. A moment later, he stepped aside. Second floor. Back office. Don't touch anything. I walked past him without another word. Inside, the club was pulsing with bass-heavy music. Strobe lights flickered across the crowded dance floor. Women in designer dresses danced on elevated platforms. Men in expensive suits lounged in velvet booths, surrounded by bottles of champagne that cost more than my monthly rent. I moved through the crowd like a ghost. No one noticed me. I was just another face in a sea of excess. I found the stairs at the back, guarded by another bouncer. This one was smaller, but sharper. His eyes tracked me the entire way up. He didn't stop me, but I felt his gaze burning into my back. The second floor was quieter. The music was muffled here, replaced by the low murmur of private conversations. I walked down a narrow hallway lined with doors until I reached the last one. It was solid oak, reinforced. A small brass plaque read, "Private." I knocked once. "Come in." A voice called from inside. I opened the door. The office was a strange mix of old-world elegance and modern tech. Wood-paneled walls, leather chairs, a mahogany desk. But behind the desk were 6 monitors showing live feeds from the club, the street, and what looked like several other properties across the city. Felix Rossi sat behind the desk, a cigar smoldering in an ashtray. He was in his 50s, with salt and pepper hair slicked back and a face that looked carved from granite. He wore a charcoal suit with a blood-red tie. He looked exactly like what he was, a man who had killed without hesitation and slept soundly afterward. 2 men flanked him. Enforcers. They were younger, hungrier. One had a scar running down his cheek. The other had the cold eyes of someone who enjoyed the work. Felix didn't stand. He leaned back in his chair, studying me like I was an insect under glass. "Hunter," he said, his voice smooth and cultured. "The grieving father. I've heard about you." "Good," I said. "Then you know why I'm here." Felix took a slow drag from his cigar. "Your boy? Tragic. Truly. But business is business. Dominic Vance owes me money. A lot of it. When a man doesn't pay, I have to send a message. You understand. You shot my son 11 times to send a message to a man who doesn't care about him." Felix shrugged. "I didn't know that. I assumed Vance had a heart." Clearly, I was mistaken. The casual way he said it, the complete lack of remorse, made my blood boil. But I kept my voice steady. "Here's what's going to happen, Felix," I said. "You're going to call off your crew. You're going to leave my son alone. You're going to leave me alone. And you're going to let me handle Dominic." Felix's eyes narrowed. He set the cigar down. "And why would I do that? Because if you don't, I'm going to dismantle your entire operation. I'm going to burn this club to the ground. I'm going to make sure every federal agency in this city knows your name. And when they come for you, Felix, you're going to wish you'd just shot me instead of my boy." The room went silent. The enforcers tensed, hands drifting toward their waistbands. But Felix raised a hand, stopping them. "Big words for a fisherman," Felix said, leaning forward. "You think you scare me? You think you can walk into my club and threaten me?" "I'm not a fisherman," I said quietly. "I was. For 3 years. Before that, I was a team leader. SEAL Team 4. 20 years in the sand. I've dismantled terror cells in places you can't pronounce. I've taken out targets that made you look like a playground bully." Felix's expression didn't change, but I saw the flicker in his eyes. Recognition. Fear. I reached into my jacket slowly, making sure the enforcers saw my hands. I pulled out my phone and placed it on the desk. On the screen was a photo. It was a grainy image from a mission brief. Me, younger, leaner, standing with my unit in front of a helicopter. The caption at the bottom read, "SEAL Team 4, Operation Desert Viper." Felix picked up the phone. He stared at the photo. His jaw tightened. "You killed a senator's son," Felix said slowly, referring to an old operation that had been buried but whispered about in certain circles. "You walked into a compound with 5 men and walked out with 15 bodies. 16, I corrected. You missed 1 in the intel report." Felix set the phone down carefully. He looked at his enforcers, then back at me. The calculation was happening behind his eyes. He was weighing his options. Kill me now and deal with the military coming down on him? Or let me walk and avoid a war he couldn't win? "Your boy," Felix said finally. "He wasn't part of this. I see that now. And you're not bluffing." "I never bluff." Felix exhaled slowly. "I'll call it off. The hit is done. Your son is off the board. But Dominic? He still owes me. That debt doesn't disappear. I'll handle Dominic," I said. "You'll get your money. But it won't come from my family." Felix leaned back, his fingers steepled. "You have 72 hours. If I don't see $250,000, the deal is off. And next time, I won't be so reasonable." I didn't thank him. I just turned and walked out. The enforcers didn't follow. Felix didn't call me back. As I descended the stairs and walked through the club, I felt the weight lift slightly. Mason was safe. The Vipers wouldn't touch him again. But Dominic? Dominic was mine. I stepped out into the cool night air and pulled out my phone. I called Victor. "It's done," I said. "Felix is backing off. But I need you to do something for me." "Name it." "I need you to liquidate the contents of that storage unit." Sell the hard drives. Auction the evidence to the highest bidder. I don't care who. Just make sure it brings in 250 grand. Victor was silent for a moment. You're paying off Dominic's debt with his own stolen money. Exactly. And when it's done, I want you to send Dominic the receipt. Let him know who saved his life. Victor chuckled darkly. You're a vengeful man, Hunter. I'm a father. I hung up and got back in my truck. The war was over, but the reckoning was just beginning. The drive back to the hospital felt different. The frantic urgency was gone, replaced by a cold, grim determination. I wasn't racing against assassins anymore. I was racing toward the truth. The vipers had been neutralized, for now. But the real snake was still coiled around my family, smiling and shaking hands while he squeezed the life out of them. It was 2 a.m. when I walked back into the ICU. The night shift had settled in. The hallways were dim, the silence punctuated only by the distant hum of floor buffers and the soft beep of monitors. I found Morgan alone in the waiting room. Dominic was gone. She was asleep in one of the uncomfortable vinyl chairs, her head resting awkwardly against the wall. Her makeup was smudged, her face pale and drawn. Even in sleep, she looked exhausted. She looked broken. I sat down in the chair opposite her and waited. I didn't wake her. I just watched her, remembering the woman she used to be before the money, before the status, before Dominic. She had been fierce once, loyal, but fear changes people. Comfort changes them even more. 20 minutes passed. She stirred, blinking awake. When she saw me, she jolted upright, disoriented. Hunter? What time is it? Is Mason? He's stable, I said quietly. The doctors said his vitals are holding. She let out a long, shaky breath and rubbed her eyes. Where have you been? Dominic said you stormed out like a maniac. I had some errands to run. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. Where is Dominic now? He went home, she said, defensiveness creeping back into her voice. He has a meeting in the morning. Someone has to work to pay for all this. I almost laughed. He's not paying for this, Morgan. You know that. She glared at me. Don't start. I can't handle your conspiracy theories right now. It's not a theory anymore. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small digital recorder I had taken from the storage unit. Victor had cracked the encryption on the way over. It contained voice memos Dominic had recorded, notes to himself, reminders, and one very specific conversation he had saved for leverage. I placed the recorder on the table between us. What is this? Morgan asked, eyeing it warily. Press play. She hesitated. Her hand hovered over the device. Deep down, she knew. She knew that pressing that button would destroy the comfortable lie she had been living. But the mother in her, the part of her that loved Mason more than her new life, won out. She pressed play. The audio was crisp. It was a phone call. Dominic's voice. Look, Felix, I don't have the cash right now. The feds are sniffing around the construction accounts. I need more time. Felix's voice. You're out of time, Vance. You've been skimming off the top for 6 months. You think we didn't notice? Dominic, I didn't skim. It was overhead. Listen, I can get it back. Just don't come to the house. Morgan will ask questions. Felix, I don't care about your girlfriend. I want my money. Or I want blood. Dominic, don't touch me. Please. Look, the kid. Her son. He's weak. He's an easy target. If you scare him, she'll panic. She'll make me liquidate everything to protect the family. I can use that to pay you. Just rough him up. Make it look like a robbery. Felix, rough him up? You want us to hit a kid? Dominic, just do it. Scare him. Break a leg. Whatever. Just give me a reason to access the emergency funds. The recording ended with a click. Morgan sat frozen. She didn't breathe. She didn't blink. The silence in the room was deafening. It was the sound of a world shattering. He told them to do it, I said softly. He didn't know they would shoot him 11 times. He just wanted Mason hurt so he could manipulate you into giving him money. Morgan looked at the recorder, then at me. Her eyes were wide, filled with a horror so profound it looked like madness. He said he loved Mason, she whispered. Her voice was barely audible. He said Mason was like a son to him. He lied, Morgan. He used Mason as a shield. And when the Vipers came to collect, he offered Mason up as a sacrifice. She stood up slowly. Her legs were shaking so badly, I thought she would fall. She walked to the trash can in the corner and vomited. I didn't go to her. I let her purge the sickness. She needed to feel this. She needed to understand the depth of the betrayal. When she straightened up, she wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. She turned to me. The fear in her eyes was gone, replaced by a cold, hard rage. It was the same look I saw in the mirror. Where is he? She asked. He's at his house, I said. Sleeping. I'm going to kill him, she said. She started toward the door. I stood up and blocked her path. No, you're not. Get out of my way, Hunter, she screamed, pushing against my chest. He hurt my baby. He almost killed my son. And if you go there now, you'll end up in prison, I said, grabbing her shoulders. And Mason will have no one. Do you want that? Do you want Dominic to win? She collapsed against me, sobbing uncontrollably. I held her for the first time in years. She felt small, fragile. What do we do? She wept into my chest. How do we fix this? We don't fix it, I said, looking over her head at the dark hallway. We finish it. I pulled her back and looked her in the eye. I made a deal with Felix. The Vipers are done with us. They got their money. But Dominic still thinks he got away with it. He thinks the Vipers are still hunting Mason. He thinks he's safe. So what do? We let him think that, I said. We let him think he won. And then we take everything from him. His money, his reputation, his freedom. We don't just send him to jail, Morgan. We destroy him. She nodded, wiping her tears. Tell me what to do. Go back to the house, I said. Act like everything is normal. Tell him Mason is worse. Tell him you're scared. Play the victim one last time. And then, I said, a dark smile touching my lips. You leave the back door unlocked. Morgan took a deep breath. She straightened her jacket. She fixed her hair. She put the mask back on. The mask of the grieving, helpless mother. But underneath, I saw the steel. I can do this, she said. I know you can. She turned and walked out of the hospital. I watched her go. Dominic Vance had made a lot of mistakes in his life. But his biggest mistake wasn't stealing from the mob. It wasn't laundering money. His biggest mistake was thinking he could break my family and walk away clean. I pulled out my phone and texted Victor. Phase 2. Initiate the leak. The sun was starting to rise over the city. It was going to be a beautiful day. The plan was in motion. Victor had done his part, and now it was time for the final act. I spent the day at the hospital, sitting by Mason's side, watching the monitors, waiting for a sign. He was still unconscious, but his color was better. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. They said his youth was fighting for him. I held his hand, feeling the faint pulse in his wrist, and promised him that when he woke up, the monsters would be gone. At 6 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was Morgan. He's packing. He says he has a business trip to Frantic. He's trying to leave. I texted back, let him go. Just make sure he takes the car. I stood up, squeezed Mason's hand one last time, and walked out. Dominic wasn't going on a business trip. He was running. The leak Victor had initiated wasn't to the police, not yet. It was to the Vipers. Victor had spoofed a message from Dominic's encrypted account to Felix, claiming that Dominic had gone to the feds and was trading evidence for witness protection. Felix wouldn't take kindly to a snitch, but I wasn't going to let the mob kill him. That was too easy, too quick. Dominic needed to lose everything first. I drove to the highway on-ramp that led out of the city. I parked on the shoulder, hazard lights flashing, hood up. I waited. 10 minutes later, Dominic's sleek silver sedan flew past. He was speeding, weaving through traffic. Panic driving. I slammed the hood, jumped in my truck, and followed. He wasn't heading to the airport. He was heading for the state line. I stayed back, keeping him in sight. My phone rang. It was Victor. The police just received an anonymous tip about a large quantity of narcotics and unregistered firearms in the trunk of a silver sedan heading south on I-95. Victor said, along with a laptop containing evidence of money laundering for the Viper Syndicate. Good work, I said. Hunter, Victor paused. The Vipers are moving too. They intercepted the spoofed message. They have a car 2 miles behind you. Let them come, I said. This ends tonight. I pressed the gas, closing the distance on Dominic. I didn't want to catch him. I wanted to hurt him. Up ahead, I saw the flashing lights of a state trooper speed trap. Dominic saw them too. He slammed on his brakes, swerving into the right lane. He was trapped. Police in front, me behind, and the mob closing in from the rear. He took the only option left, an exit ramp leading to an old industrial park. It was a dead end, and he knew it, but panic makes people do stupid things. I followed him off the highway. He tore through the empty streets of the industrial park, tires screeching. He pulled into a loading bay of an abandoned factory and killed the engine. I pulled up 50 yards away, blocking the exit. I got out of the truck unarmed. I didn't need a gun for this. Dominic scrambled out of his car. He was sweating, his tie loose, eyes wild. He held a small pistol in his shaking hand. Get back, he screamed. Get away from me, Hunter. You set me up. I didn't set you up, Dominic, I said, walking slowly toward him. I just exposed you. You told them, he shrieked. You told Felix the first talked. They're going to kill me. Probably, I said calmly. Unless the cops get you first. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting louder. I can fix this, Dominic babbled, pacing frantically. I have money. I have accounts. I can pay them off. You don't have anything, I said. Victor drained your offshore accounts this morning. Every cent went to pay off your debt to Felix. You're broke, Dominic. His face went white. What? You bought your life with your own stolen money. Felix is paid, but he still thinks you're a rat. So you have a choice. I stopped 10 feet from him. You can try to shoot me, I said, and I will break every bone in your body before you pull the trigger. Or you can drop the gun, get on your knees, and wait for the police. Prison is safe, Dominic. The Vipers can't get you in solitary. He looked at the gun. He looked at me. He looked at the flashing blue lights reflecting off the warehouse walls as the cruisers turned into the park. He started to cry, a pathetic, whimpering sound. I just wanted to be someone, he sobbed. You were someone, I said. You were the man who shot my son. The gun clattered to the asphalt. Dominic fell to his knees, hands on his head. The police cruisers screeched to a halt, officers pouring out with weapons drawn. Hands. Show me your hands. I stepped back, raising my own hands calmly. He's all yours, I said to the lead officer. As they cuffed him, Dominic looked at me one last time. His eyes were empty. He knew it was over. But I wasn't watching him. I was watching the dark sedan parked at the entrance of the industrial park. The Vipers. They had arrived just in time to see Dominic taken into custody. They wouldn't touch him now. He was police property. The car idled for a moment, then turned around and drove away slowly. I lowered my hands. My phone buzzed. It was Morgan. Mason is waking up. The breath left my lungs in a rush. I didn't care about Dominic. I didn't care about the police questioning me. I didn't care about the Vipers. I turned and ran to my truck. The justice wasn't seeing Dominic in cuffs. The justice was knowing that when my son opened his eyes, the man who put him there would never hurt him again. I drove back to the hospital faster than I had ever driven in my life. When I walked into the room, Morgan was crying. But this time, they were tears of relief. Mason's eyes were open. He looked groggy, confused, and in pain. But he was alive. I walked to the bed. He looked at me, his eyes focusing slowly. Dad, he croaked. His voice was dry, weak. I'm here, buddy. I choked out, taking his hand. I'm right here. I lost the key, he whispered. I tried to help. I know, I said, brushing the hair from his forehead. I found it. You did good, Mason. You were brave. He tried to smile, but winced. Did you get them? I looked at Morgan. She nodded, a silent understanding passing between us. Yeah, I said. I got them. It's over. Mason closed his eyes, a look of peace settling over his face. Good. I'm tired, Dad. Sleep, I said. I'll be here when you wake up. I sat down in the chair, listening to the steady beat of his heart. It was the most beautiful sound in the world. Outside, the city was moving on. The news would report a drug bust, a prominent businessman arrested, a gang war averted. But in this room, none of that mattered. We were broken, scarred, and exhausted. But we were still standing. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally home. 3 months passed. Mason came home from the hospital with a limp that the doctors said would fade with time and physical therapy. He was quieter now, more thoughtful. The lightness of youth had been stolen from him, replaced by something harder. But he was alive, and he was mine. Morgan filed for divorce from Dominic before he was even arraigned. She moved into a smaller apartment closer to my place. She didn't ask for anything. She just wanted to start over, away from the shadow of her mistakes. The trial began on a cold October morning. The courthouse was packed. The media had turned Dominic's case into a spectacle: money laundering, organized crime, conspiracy to commit aggravated assault. The DA had built a fortress of evidence, much of it provided anonymously by Victor. The hard drives from the storage unit, the financial ledgers, and the voice recording of Dominic offering up Mason to the Vipers. I sat in the gallery with Morgan and Mason. He was wearing a suit that was slightly too big for him. His crutch leaned against the bench beside him. He stared straight ahead, his jaw set. Dominic was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit and shackles. He looked hollow. His hair, once slicked back and perfect, was unkempt. His face was gaunt. Prison had eaten away at the polish, revealing the coward underneath. He glanced at us once. Mason didn't flinch. Morgan didn't look away. I just stared at him until he dropped his gaze to the floor. The prosecution opened with a sledgehammer. They played the recording. The courtroom went silent as Dominic's voice filled the room, cold and calculating, offering up a 17-year-old boy to mobsters. Just rough him up. Break a leg. Whatever. Just give me a reason to access the emergency funds. The jury's faces said it all. Disgust, anger, revulsion. Dominic's lawyer tried to spin it. He claimed the recording was taken out of context, that Dominic never intended for Mason to be seriously hurt, that he was under duress from the Vipers and feared for his own life. But the evidence was overwhelming. Bank records showing the embezzled funds, testimonies from forensic accountants. And then, the final blow, Detective Blake himself took the stand. Blake had been dirty, on Felix's payroll to keep investigations quiet. But when Victor leaked proof of his corruption to internal affairs, Blake flipped. He testified that Dominic had paid him to delay the investigation into Mason's shooting, to keep the heat off while Dominic figured out his next move. The defense crumbled. On the fourth day, the prosecution called Mason to the stand. Morgan gripped my hand so hard it hurt. Mason stood slowly, using his crutch to steady himself. He walked to the witness box with his head high. The prosecutor was gentle with him. She asked about the day of the shooting. Mason's voice was steady as he recounted walking to the warehouse district, thinking he was meeting someone who could help expose Dominic's crimes. He had overheard phone conversations. He had found documents. He had tried to be brave. And when the men approached you, the prosecutor asked softly, "What did you think?" "I thought they were going to ask me questions," Mason said. "I thought maybe they wanted the key back. I threw it in the drain so they couldn't get it. And then, they just started shooting." "Did you know Dominic Vance had anything to do with the attack?" Mason looked directly at Dominic. "Not at first. But when my dad found the recording, I understood. He traded me for money." The courtroom erupted in whispers. The judge called for order. Dominic's lawyer tried to cross-examine, to poke holes in Mason's story, but Mason didn't waver. He answered every question with a calm clarity that made him seem older than his years. When Mason stepped down, he walked past Dominic's table. Dominic reached out, as if to say something, but Mason didn't even glance at him. He just kept walking. The closing arguments were brief. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Dominic to 25 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for the first 15. Money laundering, conspiracy, racketeering, and the judge added a personal note at sentencing. Mr. Vance, you didn't pull the trigger, but you loaded the gun and pointed it at a child. You are a coward and a disgrace. The gavel came down like thunder. Dominic was let out in chains. He didn't look back. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Morgan declined to comment. Mason kept his head down. I stood in front of them like a shield. Justice was served, I said simply. That's all we wanted. We walked to the truck. The autumn air was crisp and clean. Mason climbed into the back seat, exhausted but relieved. Morgan sat in the passenger seat. She looked at me, her eyes red but clear. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For not giving up. For saving him. I started the engine. He's my son. I'd burn the world down for him. We drove in silence, heading toward the small cabin I had rented outside the city. It was quiet there. Safe. A place to heal. Mason fell asleep in the back, his head resting against the window. I looked at him in the rearview mirror. He had scars now, physical and emotional. But he was stronger for it. He would carry this with him forever, but it wouldn't break him. The war was over. The enemy was defeated. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. The cabin sat on the edge of a lake, surrounded by tall pines and silence. It wasn't much, 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, a porch that overlooked the water. But it was ours. No neighbors. No noise. No ghosts. Mason had been out of the hospital for 4 months now. His physical therapy was progressing. The limp was almost gone. But the real healing, the kind that happens inside, was slower. Some mornings, I'd find him on the porch at dawn, staring at the water, lost in thoughts he didn't share. Other days, he'd laugh at something stupid on TV, and for a moment, he'd look like the kid he used to be. Morgan visited twice a week. She had taken a job at a nonprofit helping victims of violent crime. It wasn't glamorous. It didn't pay well. But it gave her purpose. She was rebuilding herself, brick by brick. I spent my days teaching Mason how to fish, how to fix the old truck, how to chop wood. Simple things. Honest things. The kind of work that clears your head and steadies your hands. One evening, as the sun dipped below the tree line, Mason and I sat on the porch with mugs of hot chocolate. The air smelled of pine and smoke from the fireplace inside. Dad, Mason said, breaking the comfortable silence. Can I ask you something? Anything. He hesitated, staring into his mug. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't found that key? If you hadn't figured it out? I looked at him. His face was older now, marked by the weight of what he'd survived. Every day, I said honestly. But you did your part, Mason. You were smart. You were brave. You threw that key away so they couldn't use it. That bought me time. I was terrified, he admitted. I thought I was going to die on that street. But you didn't. You fought. You survived. He nodded slowly. I keep thinking about Dominic. How he fooled us all. How Mom believed him. How I almost liked him. Evil doesn't always look like evil, I said. Sometimes it wears a nice suit and smiles at you over dinner. That's what makes it dangerous. Mason set his mug down. I don't want to be weak anymore, Dad. I don't want to be the kid who gets used. You were never weak, I said firmly. You were trusting. There's a difference. And you're not that kid anymore. You're the one who threw the key. You're the one who testified. You're the one who stood up. He looked at me, his eyes searching. Do you think I'll ever feel normal again? I put my hand on his shoulder. Normal is overrated. You'll feel like yourself again. Maybe a different version. Maybe stronger. But you'll get there. We sat in silence for a while, watching the stars come out over the lake. The next morning, I woke to find Mason already up. He was standing by the truck, crutch abandoned, testing his weight on his healing leg. Feels good, he said when he saw me watching. Almost ready to run again. Take your time, I said. No rush. Actually, he said, turning to face me. I've been thinking. When I'm ready, I want to join the Navy. I felt my chest tighten. Mason, I know what you're going to say, he interrupted. It's dangerous. It's hard. But Dad, you spent 20 years protecting people. You saved me. I want to be like that. I want to mean something. I looked at my son, scarred, stubborn, and brave beyond his years. He wasn't asking for permission. He was telling me his plan. Then I'll train you, I said finally. When you're ready. I'll make sure you're prepared. A slow smile spread across his face. Thanks, Dad. Morgan arrived later that afternoon. She brought groceries and news. Dominic had been transferred to a maximum security facility upstate. Blake, the corrupt detective, had been sentenced to 10 years. Felix and the Vipers were under federal investigation, their empire crumbling under the weight of evidence. It's really over, Morgan said, sitting on the porch steps. I still can't believe it. It's over, I agreed. She looked at Mason, who was down by the lake skipping stones. He's different. We all are. She turned to me, her expression soft. I owe you more than I can ever repay, Hunter. You saved our son. You saved me from myself. You did the hard part, I said. You chose the truth over the lie. That takes guts. She smiled faintly. Maybe we can all start over. Really start over. Maybe, I said. As the sun set that evening, the three of us sat around a campfire by the lake. We roasted marshmallows and told stories, some funny, some painful, all true. For the first time in a long time, we felt like a family again. Not the family we used to be, but something new. Something forged in fire and blood and forgiveness. Mason looked at me across the flames. Dad, do you think bad things happen for a reason? I thought about it. I think bad things just happen, but how we respond to them, that's what defines us. You could have broken, Mason, but you didn't. You stood tall. He nodded, poking at the fire with a stick. I guess I'm tougher than I thought. You always were, I said. You just needed to see it. Morgan raised her mug. To second chances. To second chances, we echoed. The fire crackled. The stars wheeled overhead. And somewhere in the distance, an owl called out into the night. We had been broken. We had been betrayed. We had been brought to the edge of ruin. But we survived. And that was enough. I want to hear from you. How did this story make you feel? Have you ever had to fight for someone you love, even when the world told you to give up? Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. And if you believe that justice, real justice, is worth fighting for, hit that like button. If you enjoyed this story of betrayal, revenge, and redemption, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next thriller. We've got more epic revenge stories, more family battles, and more tales of underdogs who refuse to stay down. And here's what I really want to know. What kind of stories do you want to hear next? Military revenge? Family betrayal? Cheating spouse justice? Business warfare? Tell me in the comments what gets your blood pumping, and I'll bring you exactly that. Until then, take care of yourselves. Stay strong. Stay sharp. And remember, never underestimate a parent protecting their child. See you in the next story. Story is finished.